Now, if you're a budding filmmaker and wondering how to get started in the industry, take a leaf out of the book of North East director Craig Hornby. Craig spent 15 years developing a feature-length film called A Century in Stone, which depicts the little-known history of his hometown, Middlesbrough, a steel-making metropolis responsible for creating landmarks around the world, such as the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And here's what he had to say.
So this project starts in January 1988 at the Art College in Middlesbrough as a 6-week project to make a 3-minute historical film. I find these old ironstone miners, who introduced me to my own landscape. I'll rediscover my own backyard in a way, and it's all forgotten about. And it's going to die out with them. So what I needed to do, what I want to do, was to make, tell their story.
This seam must extend back to Skinning Grove, which only begs me to wonder, to marvel at the potential of such a prospect.
Cause for celebration, sir.
Indeed.
And so the true commercial discovery of Cleveland ironstone was made. The bed at Eston had finally proved its worth, with a richer iron content and a thickness twice that of seams along the coast. On the 8th of June 1850, the Great Iron Rush began.
This is the working class history. This is about the birth of a people, because we had this uninhabited corner of Yorkshire and South Durham that was pretty much, unknown. It was an obscure place. And all of a sudden you have this amazing community. People from every corner of Britain came here to work in the iron works and the iron mines, And that's why they called the area, a mini Klondike, the English El Dorado. The first miners' village was called California. So here's me growing up on the edge of California, find myself shooting a film in California. It's a dream come true. At a time when, films and programmes weren't made outside of TV, it was very difficult. I found myself, my greatest asset was I was good at scrounging, and convincing people that this was absolutely a righteous cause, There was so much more, unexplored, undocumented. And I worked in the business for 10 years. I worked in New York and Canada, and this was always niggling me. And I came back in '99 to make this film, to tell it, this was an epic story. The story that turned, like a tiny village of Middlesbrough into the world capital of iron and steel production. This was a huge thing. And the Eston mine was the biggest ironstone mine in the world, yet people here didn't know about it.
The unaccustomed traveller fancies himself sweeping over the crust of a smouldering planet. This whole land blazes with manufacturing volcanoes. It had no place in history, not even the faintest mark on the map. And now it is blazing, booming, enterprising. Amazingly, there was just enough old fellas left to interview in '99. And so I apply to Nesta. I get nominated by, out of the blue. Somebody's nominated me, who I didn't know, to Nesta, the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. David Putnam was the chairman. He set it up in the year 2000. This is a new thing, Great big chunks of money to a few individuals every year to make their dream project happen, So I had to come up with an application, 3-year plan. And I did that, and in it went, and I got it was up to 70, I could apply for up to 75 grand. I applied for 69,500, and I got 75 grand, They gave me more than what I applied for. We're totally into what I was doing, and I'd convinced them that this project was, worth backing. So that was it, I had total artistic control and a big load of money to make the film of my dreams, really.
The tunnelways and ironstone pillars formed a giant labyrinth that extended across several square miles. Branch lines descended into vast underground districts, such as Stapleton, Number 2 West, and Cross Keys. When
Nesta got in touch, they were very, very interested in the fact that I wasn't going down the traditional sort of routes by approaching TV or, or cinemas, that kind of thing. I was going to take it around the clubs. I was going to take it around local venues, take it to the communities themselves, turn it into an event. And we packed these venues out, we packed them out. People were coming from far and wide to see it, and blew us away completely. We had, 4,000 people came to 47 shows in the end. It went on for 6 months. In the end, I had to put a stop to it because it was just going on and on. So with all this support and a ton of media publicity, of course, because it's unprecedented, I got it to the I went down to see the UGC in Middlesbrough, multiplex, and they said, let's put it on, on a trial for 4 days. and that was in September. What happens? We sell it out for 4 days, you know, it beats all the Hollywood competition. And then when it came out on DVD and VHS, it was outselling Harry Potter 3-1 at Christmas, you know. It was a top seller in Teesside, you know. We've sold about 7,000 copies now. The fact that there's this film out there is household knowledge, and that's where we're at now. We've done that. The final sort of chapter of the project is to take this film to Sydney, Australia, and show it in the shadow of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which was made here in Middlesbrough, which is like the climax of the film is the Sydney Harbour Bridge with the fireworks going off, you know. That bridge was dug out of the hills by these old boys in our film, you know. And pretty much say, you know, that we have, I think it's been a mini revolution in local history now.
Craig Hornby there, proving that with a lot of passion and commitment, local filmmaking can make a real difference.